In 1969, 22 years old, it felt like the world was falling apart.
I went to college, I was protesting against the Vietnam War. It was a heavy time then.
In a god of a freedom, honey, don't you know that I'm loving you? In a god of a freedom, baby, don't you know that I'll always be true?
In Vietnam, we went in to get Company B one day, and 250 people went out and 4 people came back.
Oh, won't you come with me? Take my hand. Oh, won't you come with me and walk this line?
The Vietnam War was going on. My friends were coming home blinded, crippled, dead.
The social happenings of the time in the 70s let this place happen. It let it be.
There's an island across the sea, beautiful Kaua'i, beautiful Kaua'i.
So we looked at the maps of the islands and we saw that Kaua'i had a road. Then at the end of the road there was a trail, and that was exactly where we wanted to be.
When I came back from Vietnam, I had so much nightmares. And when I went to Taylor Camp, I found healing.
You could tell the difference between the guys that had served in the Vietnam War and the guys that didn't. The guys that didn't could still smile, and the guys that had, we had to teach them how to smile again.
The way it unfolded, the way it took place, God's grace was really in our lives, because you tell stories like this, people don't believe it.
Taylor Camp was the ultimate hippie fantasy. Treehouses on the beach, living naked, swimming free.
Eating psychedelics, we were expanding our lives and our minds and our spirituality.
We wanted to get away from that crazy war, those crazy cops.
Yeah, we were definitely into peace and love.
Absolute freedom in a tribal setting where the people were all real.
Here we were in a commune on the last point of the world.
It was definitely a Tarzan and Jane type of experience.
Yes, there was organization. We had a toilet, we had a cesspool, we had running water.
Every couple of years, there was a turnover and a turnover and a turnover. And while basically it was the same, but it was more surfers in the beginning, and more hippies in the end.
One of the most amazing things about Taylor Camp was the large variety of people that came here and lived here.
They were there to get away from it all.
We were all searching at that young age and in that era for different kinds of inspiration.
Back to nature, living in the jungle.
I got a package in the mail filled with shells and sand and dried up plumerias.
And I got a postcard saying, you got to come and check it out. We're waiting for a house. Right now I'm living in an ambulance and Kenny's in a van.
No shoes, no haircut, no shave.
I came here just on the surf bum hippie scum trail.
This is a great place. We can build a little tree house, live for free. There's good surf around there. And I just said, oh, it sounds like kind of a cool adventure. Why not?
When I first came here, I couldn't even swim. I kind of have a fear of the ocean, I guess. And I used to go out here and force myself to go out here and swim. And then a lot of the people here were surfers. Just from hanging around them, you know, I just started surfing, and that pretty much changed my life.
Carlos Andrade. He was a really good surfer, and we used to surf together. He used to say, we need to just get so good that we can share waves.
I surfed, and you know, I mean, I just had this wonderful, beautiful, healthy life.
When I actually got to the island, I was 15. By the time I moved into Taylor Camp, I was going on 17 and just a kid.
My friend Mike Buxton and Bob Putnam, and they're like, hey, we're going to Kaua'i. We're leaving tomorrow. And I'm like, wow, you know, I'm just spinning my wheels here. That sounds awesome.
After we graduated, we all went to California, wanted to see what was like. Shit, whoa, too much for us. Let's come back. So we wanted a place to go out in paradise. Everybody was looking for paradise that year.
I arrived with a guitar and a paint box full of artist paints and a surfboard and $30 in my pocket.
So I get to Kaua'i, and as I'm descending, I could see that this was a magical place. I could feel it.
At first, we were going to stop at this commune at the end of the road where some friends were staying. So we stopped and we stayed.
And I couldn't believe it. I walked into camp, and there were all these incredible tree houses made out of bamboo.
God, I always wanted a tree house when I was a kid.
And reality hit. A beautiful naked woman. A beautiful blonde naked woman. And she had a little girl with her. And they were prancing through the woods. They jumped over the trail, and they just disappeared. And I thought to myself, wow, I must have died and gone to heaven.
Well, the reason I went out there is to take LSD. It was all on LSD in those days.
I came all the way from Miami, Florida. A lot of the people came from California, New York, and we all just were like satellited into Taylor Camp. It was an amazing, wonderful experience.
It's kind of like Woodstock, you know, in a certain sense that it wasn't anything you put your finger on other than the fact that it just happened. And what came out of it, it'll never happen again.
Love is but a song we sing, fears the way we die. You can make the mountains ring, or make the angels cry. Though the bird is on the wing, and you may not know why. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now.
I arrived with my husband Victor and my 3-year-old daughter Heidi in the summer of 1968, and we had just left Berkeley.
It was a great turmoil in Berkeley and in the United States about the rights of students and free speech, and Berkeley, it continued to be very hectic, a lot of police brutality toward the students that were marching.
We had been very involved in the anti-war movement, and Berkeley was at the point of explosion. It was pick up a gun or leave, and we had decided to leave.
When we met Vic and Sandra, we met them because I think we'd crossed walking in and out once we got that house out there. Then they got kicked out, and they did move in with us, and then we got kicked out. So we decided, well, let's just pool what we got. And then we found out that you can get a month permit for the campgrounds at the vegetation line like all the locals do. Then they started changing the rules on permits. Now you can only have it for 2 weeks.
At one point, the police said, you know what?
Just go down here, right by the golf course, and there's some area there, and it's outside of the limits. Tourists aren't going to see you, no problem. Set up your tents and everything there, and you'll be fine. So we did.
It finally frustrated the local officials because they did try to get rid of us and they couldn't. They tried to change the rules and all that stuff, and it wasn't working. And so one night, I guess it was around 10, 11 o'clock at night, we're all there. There's 13 of us, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes cops everywhere, guns drawn. You're under arrest. So they came out, we believe, thinking that we were dealing drugs. And they searched all of our tents, they searched all of us, everything. Oh, lo and behold, there wasn't anything there. Court time was really quite interesting. Eduardo Malapit.
Well, I was prosecutor before that. And you had a lot of these guys and hippies, and they started hitchhiking, and they started to camp here and there. They used to sleep down a beach. That was the beginning of it all.
When they did finally say 90 days, hard labor, or find a place, or leave, we told them right then and there, look, we're not leaving. This is America, and nobody is going to rent to us or give us jobs. So we'll take the 90 days. And things went uphill from there.
Well, they had no facilities for feeding us. They had no bedding ready. So they had to go out and buy mattresses and bedding. The wives of the policemen used to bring food in to feed us because they just couldn't deal with it. They had no idea. And the jail was completely dilapidated, overgrown, and they just were not prepared for us.
There was one cop that came and brought his guitar and his speakers, and he would serenade us. He had a beautiful voice.
It was fun. We were enjoying it because we had a place to sleep, we had food, and it was enjoyable doing the work. And everyone there, as far as the jailers and the police that were involved, were just the nicest people in the world.
They liked the name Taylor Camp because it's just like Elizabeth Taylor, because Taylor Camp is Elizabeth Taylor's brother.
I don't know when my parents discovered it, but they found this place, and then they brought us down here. The first day I remember, it was just about like this. We came down here with our old Valiant station wagon and had lunch.
And Howard Taylor bought the property because he and his wife anticipated that they would build their home there.
My dad had already drawn up house plans for this place, and we were going to live here, and the family we were going to build our house right here, as a matter of fact.
And this was the last public property before the state park.
My dad went to get a permit, and that's when they told him that the state had plans to condemn the land.
So that meant he wouldn't be able to build his house there.
So Howard got a little bit fed up with that, and when Victor and Sandra and the rest of the original 13 got locked up in jail and busted for vagrancy, I guess he came up with the idea that he could provide a home for them and thumb his nose at the state at the same time.
My dad and my mom took our 2 vehicles and went down and picked up these 13 people and brought them back. And they pulled into our front yard and piled out all this hair, and that was the beginning of Taylor Camp.
Great place for young people. Pretty much the contingent was surfers and 18 and young and fancy-free and fit the lifestyle and hippies from the 60s.
Well, in the beginning, it started out as a group of tents right here in this little clearing. It was maybe in early 70 when the first treehouse went up. John Harder built that treehouse. John Harder was trained as an architect.
What we were hearing was that tents were okay because they were temporary structures, but building a house wasn't. What we were trying to do was, make something that was a little more substantial, a little more roomy than a tent, but we're still trying to keep these things a temporary nature.
That was when they called it the boom. They went from having tents to having houses.
Within 6 months of the time I got there, there was this big expansion of treehouse building. And I think a really important point was we had one rule. You cannot build another treehouse. You can add to any treehouse. You can make any treehouse bigger. We didn't have a rule of how big a treehouse could be. We didn't have a rule of how many people could live in that treehouse. We just said, no more treehouses. And that one simple rule seemed to really make things better.
Most of the time I lived in the Canadian house, which was a 5-bedroom house. These houses were extensive, they were beautiful, and really a lot more than you would think. They weren't just little shacks, they were actually really nice.
When you were upstairs, you were completely surrounded by the plastic and the tree. So especially when it got dark, there was almost no difference between being inside and outside.
Some of the later houses were anything but temporary. They were works of art, and they were, had a lot of craftsmanship in them, and they were really solid.
We had a gorgeous vegetable garden. It was in the shape of a mandala.
We grew New Zealand spinach because it was disease and bug resistant. Of course, radishes, bok choy, turnips, okra, parsley, basil, cherry tomatoes. We quickly learned what could thrive in the tropics and what was too high maintenance, and we just bagged those, and we just grew what would really work.
Most everything we ate was coming right out of the garden, or people were going to the beach and fishing it, or diving and spearing it. So food really wasn't a problem.
We cooked everything. Italian New Age influence, but, definitely our kitchen was a rendezvous point.
It was a great experimental living situation. There were no rules. There was nothing you signed when you came in the door. So it was all very interesting the way it would unfold. It just all kind of happened naturally. There was a co-op, there was a church, there'd be wild parties, there'd be babies born, and it was just kind of all going on.
I was only 3. I was just about to turn 4, I believe, when we arrived there. And so my take on it was just a really fun place to be living at that time. Security, we had been moving around so much, so to have somewhere to call a home.
Well, I think it's fine building jumbo planes or taking a ride on a cosmic train. Switch on summer from a slot machine. Just get what you want to if you want, as you can get anything. I know we've come a long way, we're changing day to day. But tell me, where do the children play?
There was the clean water, the clean air, there was the beach, and there was plenty of people who were always giving them attention and love, It was like they had this huge extended family. That was the really good news, yeah.
The kids that grew up there were totally blessed, happy children that never had a problem. We never had injuries of the kids. With everyone using, you had to use mosquito coils, you had to use candles. We have walls that are made of plastic and screen everywhere, and we never had a major fire.
Well, the good and the bad. The good part was he didn't have to worry about cars in the street. He didn't have to worry about there were bad people around the corner. He went to the local school. So for him, there was a lot of, we'll call it easy times. But if anybody that's raised children knows, easy times does not make a well-balanced child. So he grew up to be kind of, there's a French word for it, but I'm not very good at French. Laissez-faire, is that how they say it? And he still is. He's 36. He drives me crazy. He's still kind of, it'll all come. It's all good. Come on, get a job. And he has jobs, but I think it made him a little too free and easy with how he expected life to be, because life was pretty free and easy.
Going to school in Honolulu was tough. Being a hippie from Taylor Camp made it even more difficult. Kids didn't play with us. They shunned us. It was survival mode. My parents weren't looking out for me. I had to look out for myself.
A lot of the front houses were more of your yuppie hippies. And then in the back was a little more drugs.
Drugs. We got stoned, we smoked a little pot, but not like nothing very excessive. Maybe a couple of mushrooms once in a while.
Then the showed up. I went for a month of doing a gram and a half of cocaine, very pure cocaine a day, just a lot.
If there was a party going on, there was always pot and hash and stuff like that. That was just acceptable. There could be somebody passing out acid. I remember going to school stoned on acid, And so I had this whole different reality than other kids.
We took LSD one day, and I think Maya was conceived on an LSD trip.
Dad, are you serious?
Yeah. In May or June of 1970, this doctor shows up and starts living in the camp, only a few houses away from me, Dr. Arnie Hoffman. And it was like a blessing, you know. Here was this guy, and he said, oh, I'll help you with the baby. You know, he probably hadn't delivered a baby or been part of a baby being delivered since med school. He was a flight surgeon. He operated on people in Vietnam. He came straight from Vietnam to Taylor Camp.
My father was Dr. Arnie Hoffman, and he had his little black leather medical bag. And it seemed like he was always running off to do something with it in the camp.
So Maya's finally born. Maya came out, and she's not breathing. She's still connected with the umbilical cord, and the umbilical cord was still pulsing. So I wasn't totally freaked out, but she's not breathing. And Arnie says to me, go get a bucket of water from the stream and bring it up. And we were not on the first floor. This wasn't thinking too well. We were up where we slept on the second floor of the treehouse. So I'm running down, you know, I'm shaking, nervous, running down to the stream, getting the bucket of cold water and bringing it up to the second floor. And we dunk her in the water, and then she screams. And then, you know, she's breathing. We clean out the mucus, cut the cord.
So he really saved my life.
Yeah.
Maya was the first to be born at Taylor Camp, and it was a crazy stormy night, and my father delivered her and saved her life, actually. And when I got to Kaua'i the first time, Maya was only about 6 months old, and Maya was like joined to my hip all the time. And Michael and my father were very good friends. They were always at our house. And Claire, she would come and go and stuff, but she was an artist in her own right. You know, when I first arrived at Taylor Camp as a 13-year-old, fresh out of the city, my parents were divorced, and I would visit my father as often as he possibly could have us. He just helped people in their medical needs. He helped people with even psychologically who were dealing with whatever issues they were running away from, because Taylor Camp was a place to recoup. And my father was doing that. He was healing from the pain of what he saw and experienced in Vietnam, and still be able to do the profession that he loved the most, medicine, and helping people make him feel good. He healed and became very spiritual, very mellow, and he became the father that I remember. He made a difference. He made a difference in Vietnam, and he made a difference in Taylor Camp. In every walk of life, you keep coming back until you get it right. And I truly believe, as humanly possible, my dad got it right this time. He got it right.
There was no one who told anyone there ever what to do, ever, ever, ever. There was no one who made any rules. There was no one who could tell anyone ever. There was guys that wouldn't let you.
Well, we actually had an infrastructure. Yes, David was the cop.
I didn't pick the role.
He was the one that watched out that, you know, bad people didn't do bad things or whatever.
He would, like, if you stayed too long in your tent, then it was time to go. And he kind of kept the order around everything and made sure everybody stayed in line.
Some guy with a big beard and long hair, stereotypical hippie, he starts interrogating me. Where'd you come from? Why are you here? How long are you gonna be here? Blah, 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 blah. That ass, oh my God, he tried to kick me off the beach. And I did.
Hawk was like the sheriff, you know, Sheriff Hawk.
Someone yelled, there's some rip-offs in camp and so on. And a few lights went on, and I had turned on my kerosene lantern. And all of a sudden, hey, brother. And I could see the twin barrels of a shotgun stuck right up against my screen window into my living room. Hey, brother, you got any drugs or whatever? I can't even remember quite what he said. I foolishly I dropped to the ground and grabbed a big fat pillow off the floor there, and I put the pillow in front of me as if this would protect me with a gun. I stood up and I grabbed a staple gun. And in the kind of dim light, I raised the staple gun around like it was a pistol. I got a gun here, get the fuck out of here. And I held the pillow. Sure enough, the guy disappeared.
Don was the maintenance man on the water system.
Things would get clogged up. He'd go way upstream on Limahuli Stream and unclog it and put new things, whatever they did. And so we all could get water at the spigots and things like that. Rosie, of course, was the mayor.
I was a political science major in college. One thing I could do is I could talk and deal with people, so it was just an easy role for me. But certainly, to refer to me as any official way as the mayor, forget it. But what I was, more or less unofficially, was the athletic director. I was in charge of the volleyball court. I made sure that we had great sunset volleyball games, that the sides were even, and I loved it because I didn't have to have the best team. I just wanted to have a good game.
It was a microcosm of the universe.
The everyday things that you would deal with normally in life over an extended period of time, here you had to deal with them in close contact or in a short period of time. Let's say you had a girlfriend and you broke up with her, you would have to see her with somebody else maybe a month later. Whereas if you lived in New York City, you might never see that person again.
It was only 7 acres, and there was, 100 people on the 7 acres, A fight would break out. The whole neighborhood would be going, fight down the road! Everybody would be there to hear it and talk about it. And so it was very village-like, and a lot of the laws of a village were kind of established.
Rose and Albert would fight. And Albert would be up on his balcony. He had a trap door up in his room. He would lock the trap door, and he'd be out on the balcony burning Rose's dresses. And she'd be down below screaming and yelling. We'd be all over here in the sidelines cheering or booing.
My dad and I have really different views on things. I rebelled from my parents. I wanted to become straight. I wanted to become a normie. I wanted to have a good, secure life. I wanted to be a part of society. And so that's the road that I took.
My mother died when I was 5. And although I don't have any memories of her, sadly, I have 0 memories at all. I do know that she was an artist, and I have a memory not of her, but of her drawing right in front of my eyes. And so I became an artist in my 20s, and that was my whole existence for 22 years. I've been painting portraits. It has to be that as a tiny child, I was surrounded by these beautiful goddess-like creatures. So this is the only photo. I've always lived with this in my bedroom in any life. No matter where I've lived, this has always been part of my life, and I look at it every day. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, is this living with a ghost, or is this fulfilling that desire to have a mother that I didn't have?
My best friend was Alpin, which is Bobo's daughter. Me and Alpin hung out a lot together.
There wasn't a whole lot of children in Taylor Camp, actually. Dana and my sister and I were probably the oldest kids there.
This is Alpin and Minka. And these two were a huge part of my life when I lived in Taylor Camp. And these are the 2 girls I hung out with more than anyone else.
Minka was just a very loving person. And she was like, oh, hi, I'm Minka, and come and meet everybody. She'd take you around and make you feel really at home.
I always felt like I had to walk around eggshells around my sister because she was so sensitive. Life was harder for my sister. She passed away and died of AIDS.
You are so beautiful. To me, you are so beautiful. To me, can't you see? You're everything I hope for. You're everything I need. You are so beautiful to me. You are so beautiful.
wasn't like a commune. It wasn't like a free love kind of thing. There were relationships just like any other community. It's just that people didn't wear their clothes.
I maneuvered through the group of very interesting men that were at Taylor Camp, but I wasn't going to, sleep with them all.
I have to say, my sexual relationship there, they always end up to be with some transient. Somebody that came and went. Some camper on the beach, some girl like that, but I never really had that family type of life that a lot of people had.
Eventually it hit me, moving with the guy that grows the best weed and has the nicest treehouse, my objectives became real clear.
Yeah, everybody was naked and running around and everybody was high. And so there was the opportunity to form any kind of relationship you wanted. So the ones that were really committed sort of bubbled to the top.
I met my wife here. First time I saw her, she was running across the beach naked. And
For me, the mainland, I didn't like it at all. And I felt trapped there. And coming here was just, wow, being naked and just living in a tree house and getting up in the morning, walking out to the beach, jumping in the stream, jumping in the ocean, staying naked all day. I hardly ever put my clothes on except just to go into Honolulu or if I had to actually leave Taylor Camp and go out where other people were.
Being who they are, nude as they were, they still accept me with my clothes on.
I was one of the people that went through Taylor Camp with my clothes on. I was pressured to take my clothes off a lot, and I finally took a stand and told them, you guys are telling me society wants you to put your clothes on, you're not into it. Now you guys are pressuring me to take my clothes off, so I'm going to take my own way, and my clothes are going to stay on.
I didn't even go naked all the time. I wore pants often, small penis. That's my little joke. But I wore pants fairly often, but I went nude too.
Looking back, I scored a treehouse with a mosquito net. I was in there. I was set for life. Next morning we got up. I see this lady named Melody with the giantest breasts, this beautiful woman just walking down this trail, just naked as could be. And I'm just like, oh! I was so frozen. I was like, and then you walk out on the beach, there's all these hippies naked and all tan butts, and it's like, whoa, I'm in my bathing suit, right? And I'm the one that feels naked, right?
As far as Taylor Camp went, we were kind of straight.
Yeah. We went out on the beach naked, but we weren't strutters or flaunters, Were you?
People say, okay, you were naked. Wow. No, it wasn't like that at all. People were naked. You didn't have to be naked. But what you did have to be was real.
We had a co-op at Taylor Camp.
It's one of those ideas, you're sitting around smoking joints and somebody says, well, we should have our own store.
We bought a flatbed truck. We'd go into town and we'd buy supplies.
And all the things that we thought we all needed.
Cereals.
Rice and beans and nuts.
Toilet paper.
Coils and kerosene, all that stuff. We buy it wholesale as cheap as we can. And we'd sell it nonprofit.
It had plastic walls, anybody could cut through the plastic and steal all the food, but nobody did. By then, a number of us were on food stamps. So, well, how are we going to pay for this? Well, we have to get food stamp approval, but it required the bureaucrats to come over from Honolulu. So here's these guys, and there they are in their suits. They walk into the store, and they wanted to see if we were for real. And so we showed them kind of our books. I met with them and stuff. But I neglected to tell the people that were taking the money and selling the food to wear clothes. So these Japanese bureaucrats are looking at these very nice-looking women who were bare-breasted, selling food to, and they were stone-faced. They didn't blink. They just took it, and we got approved for food stamps.
Every full moon, we have a big full moon party, play music.
The sun would go down and the drums would start up and the flutes would start up.
there would be a bonfire, and sometimes the guys played music and sometimes not. And sometimes it was just wild, like something out of a movie, and sometimes it was really mellow.
And the girls, a lot of the girls would be just dancing around the fire, dancing around, and feeling that really tribal feeling.
One treehouse actually had an upright piano in a third-story level. Down through the jungle, you'd hear the piano playing, and it would sort of attract the rest of the people.
And I found where the music was, and I climbed up into the treehouse, and there was beads hanging down. And when I opened the beads, popped my head in, oh my God, there was like 30, 40 people in there, all zapping me with love.
This is Buffalo Bill. He used to play the saxophone in the Taylor Camp THC band. This was Kung Fu Bill. He used to play the conga drums.
I was in the band, I played alto sax, and so was John. He played keyboard and sang leads.
We put on a concert in Kaua'i, I think it was in the ballpark there, and I swear it must have been close to 1,000 people showed up.
The band was all right, and as a matter of fact, we even did a couple of fundraisers, and I do believe that in one fundraiser, the police actually came and shut us down because we were making too much noise in the park after 10 or something like that.
Hawaii, at that time, my main feeling was, wow, this doesn't feel like America. This is another place in time. When we arrived in Kauai, I think there was only one traffic light. And I believe it was over in Mana, in some cane field on the other side of the island, as we heard.
But when you know Hanalei and Haina, everybody was everybody's friend. Nobody locked the door. You had a party. They didn't send out the invitation to just talk. Everybody came.
When I drove down the hill into Hanalei Valley, there was dogs sleeping on the main highway.
Hanalei town was a sleepy little town at that time, very picturesque. And it had the little Chingyang store, and the post office was at the store. And that was the focal point. Everybody went there.
The Chingyang store had everything from produce to meats, to spark plugs, nails, hammers, fishing gear.
Mr. and Mrs. Ching always seemed kind of open to the people at Taylor Camp.
We heard some comments that the store became nothing but a hippie store because my dad took the opportunity and expanded health food back then. That's the first time I heard of granola.
The post office that I was a postmaster at was a small one, next to Chingyang store. I had to take care of all the surfers. I don't call them hippies. I call them transient people.
Pretty much everybody in camp was
General delivery. And you'd get in line, and Clorinda would just be there, handing it out to us. She was always really kind to us.
The only reason that we were able to stay there for the 6, 7 years that we were able to be there for was because the local guys let us stay there.
My grandfather, he's a kindly man. He lives on homestead land. And sometimes he'd sing me the songs he wrote when he was still a young man. And he'd play in the real old style.
the first hippies came, like, open-hearted and, you know, not bothering people, fairly, you know, being clean and stuff. And it was okay. Long hair, we really never mind because we had long hair too.
I remember hearing the word hippie, but never knew what kind of people they were, you know?
You wouldn't think that some hippies going camping would have that big an impact on the island, but it did.
Bud Heaven in 77, that was before Green Harvest, which is where the helicopters raid all the marijuana fields. So they all had a lot of money because they all had a lot of big plants.
What contact I had with them, I found them to be nice people, but it was what they were doing that was upsetting people.
The things started changing now, you know, because you're getting more like this, not very clean. After, you know, learning about like diseases coming around and stuff, you know, you started getting angry.
I wrote an article about it and I said, you know, this nudity is like walking into someone's house and spitting on the kitchen floor.
In those days, people just wanted to live the way they wanted to live. You know, I went out there, I said, big dish over here, I'm going over there. You know, I had a house here. I never needed to go there, but I wanted to live free like that. Enjoy your life.
I suppose, you know, those of us who wear collared shirts and pants and socks and shoes to work every day probably felt envious a little bit of you know, those folks who lived, you know, such a life, such a great life.
We were not respected. We were demonized. We were the source of every problem, pestilence, and plague. We were bringing it to the island. We were painted that way in the newspapers and by the politicians. They hated us. They got elected because they hated us.
I don't think it was just the politicians were trying to get them out. I mean, people in general.
Officials coming down, not doing nothing, you know. Just trying to get these guys out was hard for them.
I don't think there was an official stand that we were against them, but I will admit that we certainly were willing to print things that were bad about them.
But people just didn't like Taylor Camp because it was different. Now you get people coming around, and quite a few of them were hitchhiking. And I think we passed a law against hitchhikers too.
But, you know, it was very ironic that living in my house was the mayor's brother, Kung Fu Bill Malapit. He was in my house. He was training us in Kung Fu. He was eating my food. I mean, he was a part of our community.
I remember there was a police officer, Joe Kaua'i.
My brother Joe and I was in the police department together. So they assigned both of us because we grew up on this side of the island. My brother Joe spent a lot of time at Taylor Camp. We did a lot of camping in that area. And Joe used to cook and then take the food over to Taylor Camp.
It was our vacation spot, and we would go out there, load up the trailers, you know, bikes and all our camping gear and enough food for a whole month. We'd set up everything. We wouldn't see anyone. We're actually out here camping in the wild. No, you know, we had a refrigerator hooked up, like, you know, to this line that went to the bathroom. It was fabulous. Limahuli Stream, the Queen's Bath. We went there pretty much every day because we used that to bathe in.
Limahuli just couldn't beat it. And then the first time I met Minka and Elpin, they used to swim around with my kids. They interacted real fine. They had a great time together. Then, of course, then came the mother, Bobo, and she'd come by and gather them and take them back to the camp.
We're all pretty young, but we could do things on our own. You know, the parents would stay back at the camp and we would just explore and go. We would tell my mother that we were gonna go shell hunting, and she was okay with that because that was something normal we did. Me and my brothers and sisters would say, we're gonna go hunt for shells, and off we go down the beach. Of course, we had alternative motives for why we're gonna go down the beach. Okay, let's see what the Taylor Camp guys are up to. But really, my sister told me we were going to see naked people. So we all went and going, oh my God, naked people. I mean, nobody saw that. We just have the biggest giggle fest. It was full-on Anatomy 101 for a bunch of little kids. We took walks down there specifically during, hopefully, volleyball time when everything was flipping and flopping and we were trying to look and we weren't trying to look, but you do that thing where you're kind of looking through your fingers. It's a confusing time.
I don't think the locals like the hippies, of course not.
Every once in a while, you'd hear that the locals were gonna come down and beat all the dirty hippies that lived in Taylor Camp, beat us up. You know, we weren't worried about it because in camp there were a lot of surfer guys that were big and strong.
And Melanie, she was the biggest, most brassy, wild chick.
So we would go up to the parking lot up there and stand there, and it would be a standoff.
And she would go out naked to break up the fight and just mesmerize everybody so much with her loud way and waving her big breasts around. Even the local boys would just, everyone would give up.
One of us would, bring out a bong or a joint and say, hey, brah, I just harvested this. You want to try some? I can't do the pigeon talk, but anyway, they could do the pigeon talk, these guys, And so before you know it, it would turn into a party right there until the next time.
Only one time did I ever get jumped. Well, twice that I got jumped. Well, one was at a bar at the Anchorage.
We all got on the dance floor and stuff and, started dancing, having a great time. And Rosie, just was dancing wildly and stuff and, not really caring about what we're doing or what. It was like his dance floor. So, came worse to worse, you tell this guy, hey, bro, don't do this. You whacking my sister-in-law, don't do this.
I was with a beautiful girl that I wanted to be with forever, and we'd dance, and I'm having a great time. The next thing I know, I get pushed from behind.
You stop already, bro. Enough is enough. And he never stopped. He whacked my sister-in-law again.
I turn around, and boom!
Right there, freaking boom!
This local guy cold cocks me, and I didn't go down, and he cold cocks me again. I go down. Somehow I get up on top of him.
We started swinging.
His brother and this other howly guy, a surfer guy, come and rush me, right?
After that, you charging, Forget the dance. You're doing another dance.
I crawled to the corner of the Anchorage dance floor, and who's there playing the congas? My man, Kung Fu Bill. He's living in my house for the last 6 months. He's teaching us Kung Fu. I crawl over to where he is. He picks up his big conga and moves to the other side of the room. Boy, I knew I was in trouble then.
Right there, everybody had the local hippie, whoever was hippie was going to get licking that,
Well, he just started teaching us. I didn't know really any good moves, but I knew the one move. I knew the stance, right? I knew the stance, and I knew the cat yell. So these three guys are coming, and I get into the stance, and I came out with the heaviest cat yell you ever heard. The three guys go flying backwards, right? But I didn't have anything else after that.
Overall, the whole thing, we really never get to each other again, But we see each other. You stay over there, I stay over here, we fight.
The only locals that I know that would venture in Taylor were usually the young guys. The young men would come down there, They were the ones that were brave enough to go, let's go down to they smashed my car windows once and stole some surfboards.
One night, we're out cruising and somebody stole a car, picked me up, and we all went riding down to the end of the road. And we went to Taylor Camp. And there was a whole bunch of surfboards sitting out right in front by the wet cave down there. And we started loading up the surfboards. I think we loaded up about 15 surfboards. I still have fun with those people from Taylor Camp. And we joke about the things that I used to do. That was the first time that I've ever seen people running around naked and enjoying themselves, being free.
My mom is the nudist. And I think that was another reason why she was drawn to Taylor Camp.
Unfortunately, when I look back on who I was at that time, I see myself as just sort of the camp drunk. I probably spent most of my time at Taylor Camp loaded.
I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard once that the police put her in the trunk of their car and took her to jail once.
There's many times when we responded to scenes when Bobo was there, and we had to help manage the scene so that nobody got hurt and make sure Bobo was all right. And finally, the cops hauled her off many times.
But I was a surfer too, and I was a mother, and I loved to hike in the mountains, and so this was the doorway to the Nepali coast right here.
When she was in Kaua'i, though, she would sober up. And I feel like I learned a lot from Bobo, and I'd go to Kaua'i and hang out with her and her daughters, and I thought she was an incredible woman. I was very inspired by her, actually, and she used to swim to Kaua'i all the time.
My mom was a real outdoors person, and she's a big wave surfer. She was really famous for being a big wave surfer and a long-distance swimmer. She swam the coast. She would often swim to Kaua'i with just a mask and a snorkel, fins.
Usually on a night that I was going to swim to Kaua'i the next morning or swim to Polahali the next morning, I would get up real early and grab my preparations. I would have a half-gallon jug, just your regular water jug, half-gallon kind with the little finger hole thing and the tight little cap that you could screw on. I would fill that half-gallon jug up with the things that I was going to need on my swim. Like food, I would usually take a combination of different nuts and raisins and dried fruit. At that point in my life, I smoked marijuana, so I would put a joint in there, and I would put some matches in there. I might even put 2 or 3 joints in there. I would take my sarong. This was for when I got to the other end of the island. When I got to Polahali, I was going to have to hitchhike around the island. So I needed my bathing suit and I needed a sarong. Then I would grab a 12, 15-foot piece of small, thin line, and I'd attach the string to the finger hole, and then sometimes I would tie it around my ankle, or sometimes I would just tie it around my fin. I would grease my body up real thoroughly with wheat germ oil. The wheat germ oil, with all that vitamin E in it, would help protect my skin from the damage of the UVs. Plus, it would keep me warm. I would begin my 6-mile swim down to Kaua'i. Then the rest of the swim to Polahali is about 12 miles. Most of the time, the current and the wind would be in my favor so that it would just carry me along. The whole experience of swimming the Nepali was a really spiritual journey, you know, just so uplifting and so fun and so joyful. I'd get in a rhythm, I'd get in a flow, and my breathing and my kicking and my arm strokes would all be in this synchronized rhythm, which kind of hypnotized me and made me feel almost as if I was having an out-of-body experience, like a meditation. I might run into something like a big fish or a shark or some dolphins, and that would slam me right back into my body. I was going to Kaua'i to escape. I thought all I needed to do was get away from the liquor store, or get away from those guys, or get away from my broken marriage. And what I was trying to escape was myself, but I didn't know that.
Going back there for what we would call a retreat or a respite from our life at Taylor Camp, maybe it was more of a way to get away from the social aspect of it.
Kaua'i and the Nepali would be sort of like my rehab. I would go to Kaua'i to dry out and to be with nature, which would heal me. If it hadn't been for the Nepali coast in Kaua'i, I'm pretty sure I would have died of alcoholism or drug addiction.
In Kaua'i, it wasn't a matter of changing the planet, it was a matter of fitting in and learning to live with what existed there.
It was that great moment when I left Vietnam, come home. My dad was so proud of me. I've never seen him so proud. I mean, I only got a brown star. I don't know nothing. Everybody gets that in Vietnam. So I didn't feel anything about it. But my dad was so glowing. But I needed help. My mom saw that. She sent me where the family would just move. And it was to the island of Kaua'i.
I had a father that was in the military for 28 years. He was a full bird colonel, right-wing extremist, John Birch conservative. And we had a red, white, and blue house with a flagpole in the front. After 18 years of the colonel, I got away from him, and then I got drafted a year later. My job in Vietnam was infantry soldier and throw hand grenades and shoot people all day long.
I got there on the 4th of July, 1969, and as soon as the door opened, you could smell death.
My whole company dead, everybody. Company C, Company B. We went in to get Company B one day, and there were 250 people went out and 4 people came back, and we had to go get all the bodies and drag them back.
And we stood off a battalion. And when it was done, there were bodies all over. I carry that wherever I go.
And so on the top of this rock pile, the guys that were protecting the 40-room hospital that was down below, of course there's 3 or 4 Viet Cong up on the top, but they have these holes, they have tunnels, tunnel rats, you know, and they go running through. So they'll throw a couple of hand grenades and then run over to this other place and throw it. They can take care of like 50 of us, 3 of them. So I wandered up on the top there, and a guy threw a couple of hand grenades at me, and they blew up. At the time, I was snorting heroin, so I was on heroin, so that slowed my bleeding down. Because you have to anesthetize yourself to not know you're throwing hand grenades and shooting people all day long.
Montagnard, Chinese, and one Hawaiian. We make a trap. We try to see if we can trick them. Because what it is that if we trick them on the first instinct, they're not going to realize anything. We had to play with them. We played with the enemy. The enemy would welcome us as if it's okay, you know. And we would turn around and kill them.
I was at 95th Evac Hospital. I had a big hand grenade in my face, and a guy came in and said, "Attention." I go, "Yeah, everybody's going to stand up. These people don't have any arms and legs, you dumb shit." And the guy goes, "What?" So here comes Westmoreland. He walks up to me, and I had these beads that were given to me, souvenired to me through every village that I went through and killed the BCs for everybody. And I had this big, thick ball of beads. And he walks up to me. This is 4-star General Westmoreland. Walks up to me and goes, "Oh," and he holds onto my beads. And he goes, "More and more of these guys are trying to look like girls." And I said, "Hey, I ain't no fucking girl." I hit 4-star General Westmoreland so fucking hard. I almost knocked him over. And then they relieved me with an undesirable discharge. So like 4 days after I was back, I went in this restaurant where I used to work. And I saw this guy, Johnny Moeller. He owned this big Bellamy's restaurant. And he said, "Hi, Scotty, where you been?" I go, "Oh, I had to get drafted. I went to Vietnam." He goes, "Well, wow. Well, you want to go back to work?" I go, "No, I have an undesirable discharge." He goes, "I don't want you to kill people. I want you to cook food." He was the nicest guy. He brought me back to America, so to speak. And he was the one that told me to go to Kaua'i. For 2.5 years, I had the nicest time I've ever had in my life, going from hell to heaven.
At Taylor Camp, it was that feeling, that welcome feeling, that every tree house was your home. Different type of music you want to hear. If you want to hear a flute player, you could just go there while he's playing the flute. That's how that we grew up on the Big Island, is that when music is playing, you could go there and fall asleep and be okay. Taylor's Camp, when I was there, it was the same manner. The same hospitality that my family have shown me when I was growing up. Taylor Camp, when we lost that family feeling. I mean, coming back after hell, Everything else looks like hell. Where is heaven? I think Taylor Camp gave me heaven.
We're 18 and 19 and 20, just life was carefree and fancy-free, you know. Challenge was just getting money, basically, you know, to survive.
At Taylor Camp, I worked. I opened my own childcare center. I was only 20.
We worked in the cornfields sometimes. I worked a couple of odd jobs. And at that time, if you got food stamps, and a lot of us did, you had to work in Hyena Park.
There wasn't a lot of opportunity here. There wasn't a lot of ways to make money. I mean, you could be a taro farmer or you could be a taro farmer.
Mostly, I dealt a little bit of drugs to make some money, and then we had the rice mill restaurant. In spring of 1970, we recruited 5 or 6, mostly women, to be the waitresses, got equipment, and we'd put meals together, and tourists would come and buy our food, and locals would come and buy our food, and we owned the rice mill restaurant as a communal effort, which lasted until it all fell apart because I got busted selling a half a pound of hashish to a local man who sold it to a federal narcotics agent in the bathroom of the rice mill restaurant. We lost the restaurant, and one thing led to another. And I sort of fell in love with cocaine, and it was more important than the community there. It was more important than anything. At that point, Maya's mom was in worse shape than me, and I took my 3-year-old daughter and $500 in my pocket and the name of a guy in Bogota, Colombia, and we left Taylor Camp in September, October of '73, and went to South America and never came back.
When we left Taylor Camp, Bobo was the last one there, and we moved to the Big Island. We had a Volkswagen van, our young Moses Hamilton, 1-year-old, and $7,000 from growing pot.
It was about that time, and I don't know whether we should blame them or not, but that drugs hit the island.
They were planting marijuana all over the place. They were throwing marijuana seed in the river. Then the marijuana would be growing on the side.
The women at Taylor Camp were the ones with the green thumbs. And if you got your pot plants started off in the right direction, you would have a more successful harvest. So I would have to say that the girls, being the nurturing ones, did a lot in that area.
I didn't know too much about the drug problems then because nobody knew about marijuana. And I think some of the first plants that we got a hold of, we took it into the police station.
We're in the police station. There's a courtyard with a planter bed in the middle, and there's pot plants growing at the police station.
I was escorting this guy, the hippie, from the booking area to the courthouse. And then there was a plant right there.
And Amy thought, well, you know, if it's okay for the police to grow it at the police station, then it's probably okay for us to just take it.
All of a sudden, I seen the marijuana plant swing back. And then I look, there's no leaves on it. So I turn around and look at the guy. He had all the leaves in his hand. So I arrested him again, take him back in again for another booking.
My grandmother never knew, but Grandpa went, oh, you know what, that stuff you guys get in the back, like at the farm. Oh, Grandpa, it's bakalolo. So, you know, we can talk. He really open, you know, in this kind. Bakalolo, okay, bakalolo. Grass, you know. Oh, I heard of grass. Huh? This thing good. Go, Grandpa, the thing making money. Then he go, oh, you guys get seeds. So give him a few seeds. So maybe about 6 months later, you know, on the property line, there's a lot of guava bush and stuff and everything. So me and my brother, we, you know, going down the road, gonna look over, we go, wow, that thing look like pakalolo over there. Sure enough, the thing is high like the guava tree. And it's just growing, you know. Wow, Baba, wow, you could plant that. Yeah, nice, eh? I think. The thing was like 12, 14 feet high. Yeah. And budding, the thing is just, you know, heavy duty. That was the best thing. Oh, man.
We learned a lot from the local guys, and the one thing they said they learned from us, they said that we taught them about food stamps and we taught them about marijuana. That's what we brought.
The earth turns slowly round, far away, a distant sound is with us every day. Can you hear what it says?
This is the Church of the Brotherhood of the Paradise Children. It wasn't about Jesus, it wasn't about Buddha, but it was about spirituality.
I didn't go to church. I was raised an agnostic. My religion's the earth.
Mostly when we did in church is just play music and smoke a lot of joints.
And I began reading the Bible, and I began taking hikes and really thinking a lot, asking questions, serious questions about myself, like who was I and where was I going and what I was even doing here on this earth.
And it was at Taylor Camp that I became a Christian. I started reading the Bible and other stuff, and that's where, you know, that really changed my life.
We all, you know, did some sort of spiritual practice for sure. You know, you could see people doing their Tai Chi or whatever their path was.
For myself, it was my first opportunity to see something other than what I had been raised with. It was my opportunity to be in an Om circle. What a wonderful feeling, you know.
Lots of yoga. Everybody was yoga conscious.
Yoga.
Yeah.
Our life is our religion. It doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you're, whatever you're living is your religion. I had this giant empty hole in my heart, and this cold, ferocious wind was blowing through my heart. And I used drugs, I used alcohol, I used sex. What I really needed to fill that hole was God. And I later found God through nature.
Every now and then when I wanted to just to be alone because I was around people a lot, I would go across the street to the wet cave.
Right behind Taylor Camp, there was Toad Road, went through the garden, and that went to Buddha Mountain, which was where the wet cave was.
We'd walk down into the cave, and then we'd dive into this little hollow that you couldn't see from the front of the cave. and the light would shine through the water and pop back up again. It was called the blue room.
I would swim way deep into the blue room and just be by myself in the blue room. And then I'd come out and I'd just sit at Taylor Camp again and I'd be all peaceful and everything.
I think Taylor Camp is a place in your mind. Anywhere where you can find true communion with other people. Anywhere where you can enjoy the subtleties and the spiritual qualities of the natural world. You found Taylor Camp.
And Taylor Camp to me was a starting point. There was a point to start from where you experience something and it will affect you for the rest of your life.
And then I left because I didn't want to be part of the ending. They kept hassling Howard Taylor to sell the land back to the state. So I knew there was going to be an end soon.
All over the place, people did like Taylor Camp, and I didn't like it too. I closed it up, not because of marijuana, but that was already ongoing. But it was dirty. It was filthy. It didn't have any bathroom.
There were protracted legal proceedings leading up to the time that the state actually was able to acquire the property.
Some of the representatives of the community came to see me as the legal aid attorney. They didn't have any claim, they didn't have any right to stay there, but what we did find was there's a provision in the urban renewal law that where the state dislocated people as a result of acquisition of property, it had to provide money or assistance to relocate.
Joanne came and told me and maybe some others that it was time to end.
The way I remember it is Rosie convinced most of them to leave. I think he saw that the court case was nearing its end and that there was a likelihood that they were going to lose and be evicted.
We all went to court at the courthouse. The whole porch was filled with us, and they made the list of the original people that were there could stay there, and the rest needed to go. But by then, half of those people, original people, weren't there, and it had branched off into so many areas that they couldn't keep track of it. So we had a certain amount of time to leave. A lot of us were going to hang in until the very end.
Some residents chose to relocate on their own. Others did not. And it was those people who remained, to the bitter end, you might say, that became the subjects of the eviction process. It was not personally for myself a happy experience. I didn't enjoy doing what we had to do.
When it finally became obvious that Taylor Camp was going to be closed down by the government, there was a certain faction in camp which wanted to be reimbursed, to be paid for being forced out of Taylor Camp. Hit the government, sting them, 10 grand, 15 grand, they owe us. They're kicking us out of our home. I was embarrassed by this move. I felt that we had been so lucky just to live there, period. It was such a wonderful place. And that's why I wrote the letter. And mainly it was a thank you letter that we were allowed to be there, because it was wonderful. How lucky we were.
Very sort of life-changing experience. It was one of those things that you just never forget, and it's something that's drawn me back to Kaua'i for the past 30 years.
Across the morning sky, all the birds are leaving. How can they know it's time for them to go before the winter fire will still be dreaming? I do not count the time. Who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes? sad deserted shore. Your fickle friends are leaving. Ah, but then you know it's time for them to go. But I will still be here. I have no thought of leaving. I do not count the time. Who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes?
So then I could see the smoldering kind of smoke, and it had just apparently happened the night before. And then I called my parents and I said, well, you know, my house had burned down and the things that were in it, there was a few things left that were significant. Then my dad said, you know, just think of it this way, it'll always be there.
They can burn it down, they can torch it, they can bulldozer over it, but they certainly can't take away my memories and what it did for me.
It was the end, you know, of a really beautiful time.
Everything about my experience there is a huge part of who I am today.
I wish I could have paid more attention, been there now a little bit more, even though I can remember tons of things. Once it's gone, it's gone.
I love the Aloha spirit here, but that spirit that I took from camp and brought back to the mainland every day makes me a better person.
I wish I could go back in time and do it again. I wouldn't change it, nothing. I wouldn't change anything with it, so that's positive for me. That's all I can tell you, so.
Now the day is gone, and I sit alone and think of you, girl. What can I do without you in my life? I guess that our guessing game just had to end that way. The hardest one to lose of all the games we played. But the time has passed for living in a dream world. Lying to myself can make that scene of wondering if you love me or just making a fool of me. Well, I hope you understand. I just had to go back to the island. And what's the sun go down. And watch the sun go down. Hear the sea rolling. Listen to the sea rolling. But I'll be thinking of you. Yes, and I'll be thinking of you. And how it might have been. Thinking how it might have been. Hear the night birds cry. Watch the sunset die. Watch the sunset die. Well, I hope you understand. I just had to go back to the island. For all the sunny skies is raining in my heart. And I know down in my soul I'm really gonna miss you. But it has to end this way with all the games we play. Well, I hope you understand. I just had to go back to the island and watch the sun go down. Watch the sun go down. And hear the sea rolling. Listen to the sea rolling. But I'll be thinking of you. Yes, and I'll be thinking of you. And how it might have been. Thinking how it might have been. We're hearing the night bird cry. Listen to the night bird cry. And watch the sunset die. Watch the sunset die. Well, I hope you understand. I just had to go back to the island. For all the sunny skies is raining in my heart. And I know down in my soul I'm really gonna miss you. But it has to end this way with all the games we play. Well, I hope you understand. I just had to go back to the island and watch the sun go down. Watch the sun go down. And hear the sea rolling. Listen to the sea rolling. But I'll be thinking of you. Yes, and I'll be thinking of you. And how it might have been. Thinking how it might have been. We're hearing the night bird cry. Listen to the night bird cry. And watch the sunset die. Watch the sunset die. Well, I hope you understand.
It's still empty. They said they were going to make a park. They never did.